Hello, my name's Adam, and in July of last year, I broke my fifth metatarsal. And like with anything, you start searching the internet for other people's experiences. And during that process, I found quite a lot of reports on various discussion boards, which I found helpful to prepare me for what to expect. So I thought I would give back and share my own experience and learnings about the whole process, healing times, and the process of going through the UK medical system with a broken fifth metatarsal. Hoping to also sort of help other people shortcut that process of learning what to expect along the way. So it was the 6th of July last year, and I remember Italy were playing Spain in the semi-finals of the postponed Euro 2020 championships, and I was quite interested in this game because England would play the winners in the final. And I remember just before extra time in this match, I thought I'd go out for a walk to stretch my legs. And I wish there was a sort of heroic story to tell about how I broke my foot, but unfortunately there's not. And the sort of thing that really cemented the sorriness of the situation here is that my own Ring doorbell captured me breaking my foot. So I simply went out for a walk and not really paying attention, I slipped off the curb at the end of my driveway. So that sort of fairly innocuous little fall there, I managed to roll my ankle over, overextend my ankle, uh, sort of outwards, downwards towards the curb, and that took the entire weight of my fall. And what you learn when you talk to the medical community is that this is a really, really common injury, sometimes referred to as the dancer's injury because of the way in which dancers rotate their feet. But effectively, what happens, and it's fairly gruesome, is that you over rotate with such force that the tendon that normally connects your lower leg to your fifth metatarsal is pulled back up with such force that it rips the bone apart. So it completely snaps the bone. So yeah, fairly horrendous. It wasn't as painful as you might expect, right? You get the initial snap, and then you think, well, I've done something wrong here. Actually, my initial thought was, this is really inconvenient. Maybe I can't finish my walk. I thought maybe I could sort of walk it off, but I put my hand down, and even through my shoe, I could feel the bone sort of sticking out the side of my foot. It hadn't gone through the skin, but I could feel the bone in the wrong place, and I was like, okay, well, something is drastically wrong here. And I sort of hobbled back into the house. It's 10:30 at night, and said to my wife, I think I broke my foot. And she said, "What do you mean you've been out for 30 seconds?" I said, "Yeah, I fell off the curb at the end of the driveway, and there was no alcohol involved here at all. It was completely a sort of ludicrous accident." So my father-in-law came over and drove me to the hospital to confirm the situation. So this is what my foot looked like at about an hour or two after the accident. You can see that the sort of fifth metatarsal runs down here, and there's some swelling, and the bone is sort of sticking out here. So something clearly is not right. And this is actually a really common injury that happens with footballers as well. It's the same one that Wayne Rooney got when he was at Manchester United, probably over 10 years ago now. And here's me in accident and emergency. Very thankful here for the NHS provided crutches, which made me getting around A&E a much more dignified process, because before then I was sort of hobbling from room to room, and then these crutches sort of made a world of difference. So thank you to the sort of doctor that realised that I could find them and to use them, and she found them for me. So what happens when you go to A&E in the UK? Well, this was obviously during COVID, so the medical profession is very, very busy, more busy than usual. And when I first got there, I sort of hobbled through. I said, "Hey, I think I broke my foot." And because I wasn't sort of half dying, they sort of triaged you, well, this is not urgent. And they said, well, you're probably looking at a 6 hour wait. Now, bear in mind, this was at 11 o'clock at night. So I was probably looking at till 5 in the morning before I even got seen. So I settled into my chair there and sort of got my phone out and um, caught up on the football result, which Italy finally won, and actually they beat England in the final, and sort of settled in for a fairly long night in A&E. And thankfully, it wasn't 6 hours; it was more like 2 hours. But the process was you talk to an A&E doctor, they look at your foot, and straight away she said, right, I know exactly what you've done there. We see it all the time, but we need to send you for an X-ray to find out exactly how bad it is, because as you get into this sort of rabbit hole of fifth metatarsal breaks, what you realize is you can get unlucky or you can get lucky, and there's a huge variance between a minor break and a big break. So here's what my foot looked like. So this is the fifth metatarsal bone here. So this sort of runs down to your little toe and connects it back to the, I think this is the cuboid bone here in your foot. This is the cuboid joint. So you can see this little chunk here has come off this bone completely. There's a tendon here that isn't shown on X-ray, made of soft tissue, which is not shown, which the tendon has yanked that back and completely ripped that bone apart. So this little bit here should really be in there and attached to this bone. So as soon as they saw that, they said, wow, okay, that's a pretty big break. That's not a hairline fracture. That is a displaced fracture. You're going to need treatment. And they said, you're going to need treatment. You're going to need metal inside of your foot to hold it back together so that it heals. And you'll have to go to a different hospital. So we'll sort of send you home now, and we'll give you a call tomorrow to schedule your operation. And actually, they were so certain of this, they did a COVID test on me, took my blood in preparation for the operation, and I went home and slept on the sofa. And so that the following day, I sort of woke up and my foot looked like this. So it's starting, the swelling is starting to come out here. You can see I've got no protective bandages. It's just a kind of foot there being supported by however I put it on the desk or whatever. And I get a phone call from the NHS orthopedics department, and they said, actually, we probably don't think you need a operation. We're kind of not 100% sure. You'd need to come back and have a chat with us. Come and see an actual orthopedic consultant. So they scheduled an appointment. What I learned from doing my own research, from purely what I got from A&E, is that I had a certain type of fracture. So I'd been unlucky in the respect that it was a fairly major break. It wasn't just a hairline fracture, but I had been lucky in terms of where the fracture was. So if we look at the types of different fifth metatarsal fracture you can get, they are categorized based on where it happens on the bone. So I don't really know much about head fractures and shaft fractures. Stress fractures are normally caused by sort of running related injuries, things that happen over a period of time, more of long term, hence the name stress fractures. A Jones fracture is a really special type of area on the bone where if you're unlucky enough to get a break there, then you almost always, as far as I understand, need a piece of metal to hold that in place, because it takes a very long time to heal. This area of the bone is not very well supplied with blood, and therefore it can take a very long time to heal. Whereas my particular break was here, right at the end, and it's called an avulsion fracture, which I think relates to the fact that the tendon, I think it's the Bravis tendon, I forget the name of it, peroneus Bravis tendon, pulled this part of the bone off. So you can see this is the cuboid bone. This is how your foot is supposed to look, and this end bit of my fifth metatarsal has been pulled off there. And this sort of a turquoise area here, it's not super clear whether or not you should have an operation or not. Hence the non-definitive answer I was getting from the NHS. And also when you dig into the research and you read the white papers of sort of the meta studies of how people have been treated, and the meta study of a meta study, sort of the trending of studies, what you realize is that we don't actually have a conclusive answer here. Most athletes who have avulsion fractures in this area will have an operation. So footballers get this a lot, and that's to sort of give them the best chance of healing in the lowest possible amount of time. However, for the general public, it's sort of not clear. It's kind of like, okay, yes, you might get a better outcome with a piece of metal in your body and holding it, the bone in the right place. That will cause it to heal faster. But as the consultants pointed out to me, well, that's a fairly major piece of surgery, right? They open, they cut a hole in the skin, and they drill through the bones, and they put some metal in. So you have all the risks of the surgery and the infection, and maybe you need the metal out, and the metal might irritate you. Having a piece of metal on X-rays in the future is not convenient. So there's a whole raft of possible reasons why you want to avoid surgery. So the end result was, after sort of going back and forth with various consultants, I spent a couple of weeks in this sort of stiff shoe, they call it. So it doesn't run all the way up your leg. It just kind of keeps that fifth metatarsal in a fixed state when you're moving around. And this actually lets you get around pretty well, even without using crutches. So even by sort of week 2 or 3, I could walk up and down stairs with the help of this shoe, which you can see elevates your heel off the floor, or elevates your toes off the floor, and puts all of the pressure of your walking purely on your heel. So it feels a bit strange at first, and you sort of hobble around a bit, but you get used to it. Okay, so let's think about what happened then. Well, after 1 or 2 weeks, the bruising really starts to come out. Sort of it's very evident that inside of your body you have literally ripped a bone apart, and that bone's full of blood vessels, and that blood is just spilling out inside of your foot and being held in there by the skin, and it gets to some really surprising parts of your foot. Like even underneath my foot, I had a pooling of blood. So it looks really bad, right, when you look at this picture. And I suppose it is. I mean, it's a fairly major break, but this was the worst of the bruising, shall we say. Now, because of the unconclusive nature from the NHS, and sort of to cement that use of the word unconclusive, I had a call off one of the NHS consultants, another one who I'd happened to have spoke to, and he said, oh yeah, maybe I would have put a pin in it. Maybe I would have put some metal in it. So I had one consultant telling me not to pin it, which was the approach that we'd all agreed on. But then we had sort of another person in another hospital calling saying, oh, maybe I would have done this, which leaves you thinking, well, what is the right approach here? Maybe the answer is the sort of jury's still out. So I thought I would get a second opinion. So I went via the company I work for, provide a private healthcare package, and they provide the ability to get second opinions on diagnosis. So I went to a Bupa hospital and got a second opinion from, you can pick and choose your consultants, right? So you do your own research. I found one of the top orthopedic consultants specifically for ankles and feet injuries in my area of the UK. I had an appointment with him, and he said conclusively, gave me a lot of confidence. He's like, yeah, I've seen this before. Leave it. Don't put any metal in it. You will get better. So that was a really reassuring thing. Let's fast forward a little bit. So to the end of July, you can see even by now the bruising is a lot better. You can still see the foot is absolutely huge compared to the other foot. So this entire area is almost You kind of almost like a club foot. Um, but at this point, I've got sort of certainty in my mind as to what's happening. We're going to go with a sort of natural healing approach, and you realise that well, we're not medicine's not really helping me much here. I'm not taking any medicine. I'm not doing anything related to surgical intervention. It's purely my body healing itself, and with the option of doing a bit of physio when you think you're ready for that. So let's fast forward a little bit in terms of my progress. So by a month in, this is 4 or 5 weeks after breaking my foot, still wearing that shoe that I showed you. We went to IKEA and we bought this bed, and I was able to sort of use a screwdriver and build this bed for my daughter for her room. So you've got a semi-useful degree of mobility by 4 weeks with the use of the shoe, which is still inhibiting your movement a little bit. Right, let's fast forward another month. So this is maybe 8 weeks after break, and here I've taken our children to a local transport museum, and you get to ride on the old buses, etc. So I remember I drove to this venue in our cars. We got an automatic car, but I was able to drive by this point. So 8 weeks in, even with a pretty major, serious avulsion fracture of the fifth metatarsal, my own sort of empirical experience is you can be driving a car. And we went away for my wife's 40th birthday, and we stayed in this place with a sort of lovely hot tub at. And I remember having to walk through the woods fairly sort of gingerly to get to this hot tub. So I was sort of maybe doing half a mile to a mile walks by this point. Okay, let's go 3 months after break. And by this point, I'm doing pretty sort of decent walks in the woods with the family with my regular shoe on. So I've gone back to the consultant my private consultant after about 3 months and said, I'm still not fully healed here. I came into this, doing my original Googling. You get some people saying, "Oh, you'll be fine after 3 months. You'll be running again." And I therefore had this lens that I was using to see the world of healing, which was sort of a bit warped in my opinion, looking back. So I went to my consultant and said, should I be a bit further ahead? And he gave me a few bits of advice. He said to me, don't worry about 3 months versus 6 months. You will get there. He said, you might be worried that you can't do intensive exercise yet, but you will get there. So don't worry about it. We still don't need surgery. He said, give it another 12 weeks. The second thing that I said was, should I have an X-ray to see how the healing's going? And he said, absolutely not. He said, your body will get there, and X-raying it might show a slight deviation, but that's just going to play on your mind and might even stop you from sort of testing the healing to its limit, which is going to encourage it to heal. And he actually said to me at this point, start make sure you're never using the rigid shoe. Make sure at 3 months you're just using your regular training, like sneakers or trainers. So from that point on, I stopped using the supportive shoe. And I was probably doing 3 mile walks by this point. So here, we went to the National RAF Museum. This is made up of lots of huge aerodromes. So you do a couple miles walking there. Here we went to some parks in our local city. Lots and lots of walking. And I remember I couldn't quite keep up with the kids. I couldn't run after them, but you could walk around and that was fine. All right, so let's fast forward and bring this to sort of conclusion in terms of looking back and full recovery. So by December time, so that is 5 months after breaking my foot, I was able to do my first run. Probably 5.5 months, I was able to do my first run. So just after Christmas, I did my first run, and I think I ran a mile. The sort of the thing I should have shared before this is before breaking my foot, I was a fairly regular runner, so I'd run every single day, a few miles, and that was a big part of my personal routine. So getting back to running was a big worry for me. A lot of times during the process, I was sort of worried that I might never even run again. I mean, it seems kind of silly looking back, but when you're in the sort of your darkest moments, you think, well, it doesn't feel right. There's something just not feeling right, but my body did get there, and your body will get there in the end. So I had my first run on a couple of months ago, 28th of December. Today is the 8th of March, so that's what, 2.5 months, maybe 10 weeks. And in that time, I've gradually increased my running up and up and up. So I've done about 200 miles running in that time, and it's been interesting to see how your body gets back to the baseline that you once had. So in those 200 miles, I sort of naturally lost the half stone of predominantly fat that I gained in that period in between from lack of activity. That's kind of naturally drifted away. My running pace when I first got back to running in December was, really, really far down on before. But the heart rate that I had when I was running, and even my resting heart rate, like my resting heart rate before breaking my foot was around about 40 beats per minute. My resting heart rate after 4 or 5 months of relative inactivity was nearer 60 beats per minute. So, a huge increase. But even in this 10-week red recovery period here, my resting heart rate has already gone back down to what it used to be, which is about 40 beats per minute, lying down, right? Like during the day, maybe 50 beats per minute. Any lasting effects? Well, the bone, when I feel my foot, the bone still doesn't feel like the other foot. There's definitely something different there. So kind of the bones have joined together and ossified and sort of created new bone in a sort of strangely shaped fifth metatarsal, which seems to be holding up completely fine. The tendon, this peroneus brevis tendon, was displaced slightly. So when it comes down the foot, normally you could feel it under the skin, whereas mine is slightly offset a little bit now. But again, doesn't seem like there's any lasting effects. The overall mobility of the foot in terms of stretching your ankle back and forth is a little bit lower than it used to be, but it's coming back even after 6 months. This is one of my learnings, is that to get a full recovery, as the consultants told me, could even take 1 to 2 years. And then there's probably more the mental changes, which is you're very aware of your foot. Like you definitely don't want to stub your foot because you're worried that it's slightly weak. When you're walking along uneven ground, you really don't want to over rotate your foot because you're worried that it's slightly weak and you might rip the tendon off. This is probably more mental than physical, but this is one of the things that I've experienced. Again, as I said, expectations versus reality. Anything you read about 3 months, in my opinion, is probably for the very minor fractures. If you've got a fracture like mine, maybe reset your expectations at 6 months to get back to your previous exercise levels. And on that point regarding exercise levels, you can see here how my activity dropped. This is my activity sort of averaging like 1,000 calories a day beforehand of active calorie burn, and no matter how hard I tried, you drop that down like to a third or a quarter of what you had before. So you're burning 750 calories or so less per day, and even though you naturally eat less, I think you never eat the full gap less exercise, so that it's always offset a little bit. Hence the weight gain that I experienced. And then you can see there's a gradual increase here back to normality, sort of walking longer and longer and longer. One of the things looking back that I could have done is used more exercise bike in the recovery process, which is obviously less impactful on your toe. And then my closing thoughts are just kind of a bit more philosophical, perhaps, and more on the macro level, which is you realize that when you have some of these sort of breaks that you experienced, is that medicine only gets us so far, right? So um, ideally, you would love to know exactly what your body's doing, send in a team of nanobots to purely fix this break without even opening your skin. But you realize that in some forms, we've got a fairly rudimentary, archaic way of fixing our bodies still. So there's a huge scope there for advancement in technology in the future. Um, One of the things I learned to respect is that, here in the UK, we have almost national respect for the NHS and appreciation for that. But it's not until you get into the system that you realise just how stretched it is and how much you appreciate the people that work in the system. Because a broken foot is by no means the worst thing you can do to you, right? So yeah, very grateful for having that. Despite having the second opinion via private, private's never going to be there to deal with emergencies. So I hope you found that useful. That whistle stop tour of my experience of breaking my foot, and I hope if you have broken your foot and this is the first video you've come across, I'm sorry for the pain that you might be experiencing, but rest assured that the road to recovery is definitely more fixed and real than you might expect at this moment. So best of luck with it. Thank you.